Hello, you beautiful people. This episode Games Up Podcast is going to be a little bit more unpolished, a little bit shorter, because it's just me this week again. Lewis is here, but I had a thing over the weekend and we couldn't schedule together, and it's all just a bit difficult. So it's just me. It's going to be a lot more rushed, a little bit crap, to be honest, but hopefully have some interesting things in, especially for you Overwatch fans. As the Overwatch League has been happening over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about it a little more and talking about the successes of it and how it's brought people to a kind of new version of an esport, and what it could look like for the future. And this weekend, my boys, the London Spitfire, took the first season. They took the championship for the first season, which means inevitably we've got to start looking ahead to the second season and what that will look like, what it will entail, and what will change about it. So, whilst this is a shorter episode of the podcast, a bit sort of off the beaten track of what we normally do, I hope you find it interesting nonetheless, and here are the ways that I think they should improve the Overwatch League next year. The first one is a bit of an odd one, and also a pretty difficult one, so go with me on this, but it's more conventional advertising. So the Overwatch League relies a lot on sponsorship, like Toyota, like Intel, Insights powered by Intel, they've got that kind of stuff like Dolby, and they've got some really high-end sponsors. But the problem is, for the people watching on TV, like on ESPN or on Disney, which it was streamed on this weekend, that's crazy that it was on Disney. For the people watching that at home, the breaks in between games are traditional advertisements. It's traditional car ads, perfume ads, whatever you get on TV. But for those of us watching on Twitch, where the majority of the audience is, and where the majority of the audience started, really giving it room to grow, they're kind of 3-minute dull breaks. There's not a lot to them. They're just sort of clips of the arena with not a lot happening, and they're fine to watch. And it would be ridiculous to expect them to program more content in there, because you don't want people at home missing that content and feeling like they're getting a lesser experience. And also, that means a lot more production to put on the side of the Overwatch League team. So I'd love to see them do conventional advertising in there. I'd be totally okay if those 3-minute breaks got them a little bit more money to do a little bit more production and didn't see me seeing the same EE advert or whatever it is that Twitch overlays in their kind of traditional advertising slot there. I'd be just as happy with a lot more spread of advertisements and a lot more traditional advertisements. It wouldn't cheapen it, in my opinion, but it would, I think, space it out a little bit kind of more naturally and help it flow a little bit better. The next idea is the skins. Now, the skins aren't really a big part of the Overwatch League when it comes down to it. The league itself are the teams that you love playing the game that you love. But one of the best ways that people have gone to show the support for their teams is by wearing those skins in the real game. I think this is really neat for a couple of reasons. One, because there's no real difference other than skill level between somebody wearing a London Spitfire skin in their home and somebody wearing a London Spitfire skin in the stage. Now, obviously, there's, the difference of wage, the difference of reputation, the difference of fame, so on and so forth. But somebody, for example, who picks up the London Spitfire skin today could play on the London Spitfires in a few years or a few months. And I like the idea that the only thing, as those skins released, the kind of barriers of being a pro player and just being an enthusiast player were broken down a little bit as that production level was handed out to the people. So I'd like to see them take it a step forward next year. The likelihood is that those skins will be redesigned, the jerseys will be redesigned. I mean, obviously, that's how they make money on the merchandising, right? And I'm going to be buying one of those jerseys day one, so it's probably going to work. I would, however, like to see the skins affect the UI of the game and the ins and outs of the game a little more than they did. If you buy the skin of the players that you like, or the skins of the players you like from the Overwatch League, all it does is add a skin. But when you're watching the Overwatch League, the UI is changed to the colour of the team, and your weapon is changed to the colour of the team, and your ult is changed to the colour of the team. And I think that would be a really nice thing for Season 2. It would feel just more Overwatch League-y. It would separate playing with a skin to playing with a regular Overwatch, skin, I suppose. But it would put a lot more value in the Overwatch League skins, and I don't know that it would be that hard to do, especially as it's all been already designed for the UI of the Overwatch League. I think that would be a good thing to do. Next, more Malik and more Zoe. Now, if you watch, this is a real in-deep Overwatch League comment, so bear with me if you don't watch it. If you watch the Overwatch League, there are 4 or 5 main commentators and 4 main shot callers, and they're all really, really great. They are super professional, they're super on point with all of their analytics, they understand the game so well, they really make the show. The show, the league, and the production of it would not be anywhere near the level that it is if it weren't for those pro callers and those those shoutcasters, sorry, and those analysts and those presenters. However, there's 2 presenters that mainly work the floor of the arena, and they are Zoe and Malik, and both of them add something really, really interesting to the Overwatch League. They add interactions with the crowd, which is one of the more special things about the Overwatch League, because it's able to draw the numbers of people that it is. To put that into context, they sold out this week the Barclaycard Arena in Brooklyn. Like, that's as big as selling out the Wembley Arena in London. You don't do that if you're small, and they were selling, not quite selling out, but they were selling a smaller but a still fairly well-sized Blizzard arena for days on end each week in California. This league is able to sell tickets to people, and the interactions with the crowd are something that really make it special. That's why so many of those moments from the crowd have gone viral in Overwatch communities, and people holding up dumb signs or doing stupid dances, or there was that one guy who had a cat puppet that was just weird. I'd like to see more time spent with Malik and Zoe on the floor talking to the people who are there watching the league. Not necessarily the kind of nerdy vox pops of, oh, who are you and what are you supporting and all this kind of jazz, but find somebody with a cool sign, or find somebody who's holding up, who's maybe met at the Overwatch League. Find the first person wearing a jersey for their team. Ask why they're here, where they've come from. Find the people who have travelled the furthest. There's something really, really interesting about the spread of people who watch the Overwatch League. As far as I'm concerned, it's permeated far further than esports have in a long while, and telling those stories is a really, really important part of the league going forward. The next thing I want to see them do, the penultimate thing I want to see them do, is show us more behind the scenes of the life of these players. At the start, and more towards the end as well, we saw what it was like to actually play in these teams, the kind of spaces they lived in, the kind of hard work they had to do preparing for the shows, and how they have to put in effort in more than that you might just think. They're not just practicing the game, for example, they have fairly strict dietary routines because they have to focus on what they eat, how easy it is to consume, and how healthy it is, because they don't have a particularly active lifestyle away from, well, at least professionally. But they also have the troubles of living together and communicating together. And for some teams, that caused far more trouble than just trouble at home. The Shanghai Dragons were the worst team in the game, unfortunately. They had a 0 win rating. They did not win a single match. But they're a really, really talented team, and the reason they didn't win anything is because they come from such a spread of different countries and languages, and communicating between the team was really, really tough to do. When they got it down, you saw how good they can be and the promise of what was in that team, but between a coach from one country, a couple of players from another, and a couple of players from another, and then some substitutions from another, there was just a massive, massive language barrier there. That's really, really interesting, and it's something I had no idea about going into the league, that something like that would even be a problem. It's me being dumb, I suppose, but me shouting alt down a microphone, it didn't occur to me that that would be the kind of thing that on a professional level is a massive problem. I'd love to see more of those behind-the-scenes bits. I'd love to see them making their beds at the start of the season and having to strike them down if they don't get into the finals. I'd love to see the dynamics when a new player is added to a game, or maybe why a player decides to leave. I want to see more of the kind of behind the scenes stuff. Now they have to be careful with it, because there was some pretty nasty behind the scenes stuff that happened this year, and it's kind of a shame that stuff happened. But I think there are some really, really talented, brilliant people in that league, and I'd like to see more of what they do when they're not just being amazing Overwatch players. And then the ultimate thing that I'd like to see them do is have a little bit more of a dynamic system with the tokens that they had. The tokens at the start of the Overwatch League caused a bit of a controversy when people worked out how much they were going to be charging for outside of the show. Now, if you watch the show, you gain Overwatch League tokens and you can spend them on skins, and that's great. but you don't get a huge amount of them, and there's a huge amount of skins to buy, especially if you're a real die-hard fan. I'm a die-hard London Spitfire fan, for example, and I've managed to buy maybe a third of the skins, having watched the league from literally day one. I imagine if you're a die-hard fan of maybe two teams, maybe you're based in Los Angeles, for example, where there are two Overwatch League teams, that becomes a lot harder for you. If you want to be super die-hard into those teams and show it off to people, you've got to part with a fair amount of money. And it's annoying that knowing that watching the league and watching your team do well doesn't net you anything, that supporting this team only nets you the happiness of victory. And whilst that's great, I think they could do it a little better. So, I'm going to suggest two suggestions. One of them I think is a lot more viable and something that I think they could probably bring in and I'd like to see them do. The other is something I'd love to see them do, but I don't think they ever will because it's pretty risky. So, the first one is you should be able to pledge your allegiances or your support to one or two teams. You should be able to sign into Overwatch and say, hey, I consider myself part of the fans of the London Spitfire and the San Francisco Shock. And every time they win a match, you should have an opportunity to gain more tokens, or maybe double tokens for the next few matches, or maybe you have an even higher chance of getting one of those 100 coin drops, or maybe a little more because they won. And if they lose, it shouldn't be much of an effect. You still get the 1 coin for watching the match, and that's about it. You shouldn't be able to switch your allegiances when the league starts. You should be sort of roped into it before the league, and that should be set as the league starts and carries on. The only way this would change is if there's a major scandal with the team that you're a part of, and the Overwatch team would then give you the opportunity to say, I no longer consider myself a fan of these guys, I'm now a fan of somebody else instead. That would be really nice. That would mean that fan service goes a long way. It would show the teams how they kind of stack up in terms of fans and what their fans get into them for like how they think they'll win and who's willing to support regardless of winning, and what Twitter numbers compared to Overwatch numbers, and just from an analytics side it would be really cool. It would also mean that teams feel the effect more of their scandals. One of the big hang-ups I do have about the Overwatch League this year is that there were two pretty horrible stories about two pretty horrible characters. Players. Characters as people. About two pretty horrible players, and it seems to have sort of dissipated into nothing. I think they're probably both going to be pursued and both have problems, as a result of their actions. But it doesn't feel like they really got the comeuppance they deserve, and that might be a bad way to put it. But it doesn't feel like... It feels like they went from hero to middling rather than hero to zero, which they really, I think, should do if what happened is the case and is true. But it would be nice to be able to go, actually, no, after what happened here, I'm not a fan of that team anymore. I don't consider myself a fan. And that team, whilst that might damage the morale of the players, which is a great shame, it would also show how much these players have the responsibility on their heads. And it might make esports sort of look more at how you act as a personality as alongside the quality of your play. It's a bit of a heavy one, but I think that could work. The other way that I'd like to see them do it, and I guarantee you there's no way they will ever do this, is let me bet my tokens. I don't want to bet them on any other kind of site. I don't want to go through third party. I just want to say, hey, I'm willing to put 20 tokens towards London winning this match. And maybe I get 25 or 22 or however many back. Now, there are a couple of problems here, and I'm going to address them straight up. The first thing is that you couldn't or you shouldn't ever be able to bet the same tokens you can buy skins with. I don't know quite how that would work. I'm thinking maybe you can only bet with coins over the last denomination of 100. So if you have 530 coins, you can only bet with 30 coins, because you shouldn't be able to buy tokens for the Overwatch League and then bet with them. That's a really slippery slope to gambling. The other way they could do it is have red and blue tokens, and you can convert blue to red and buy skins with them, but not backwards. So you can buy premium red tokens to buy skins, or you can earn in-game blue tokens to bet on the Overwatch League, but never the two shall cross, if that makes sense. I don't think they'll ever put a kind of system like this in place, because there's been so many problems of loot boxes and gambling and this, that, the other in the industry of late. They really don't want to go any further down that slope. but I would really like to see them do it. I think it would be nice to be able to sort of stake something on a game that really means something to you, or say, oh, I'm 20 coins away from that Doomfist skin in a 17 map week. There's no way I'm going to get it. I'd like to do something that has a little bit more risk, but makes the getting of those coins even more valuable, because it would be quite exciting. Imagine if you put, like, in the start of these playoffs, there was no way, nobody ever thought that London was going to get through. They had no chance in hell. They were a total snowflakes vote on this. That's not a phrase, is it? They were a total crapshoot. That'll do. They were a total crapshoot on the league. But I would have liked to bet on them, a couple of tokens, 5 or 10 nonetheless, to sort of say, hey, I'm supporting this team and I'm all in on them. And getting those tokens back, if I bet 10 and got 15 back, those would have been the 5 most exciting tokens I'd have had in a while, because not only were I getting a chance to buy a new skin, but it was also an actual encapsulation of my team succeeding and doing well. And then, I don't know, I think like it would have quite an exciting kind of hype train moment to it, and they want to try to avoid some of that in certain ways, and they're probably never going to do it, but it would be cool if they did. So, to summarise, the Overwatch League has been incredibly good fun. And if you play Overwatch but don't watch the league, I really, really encourage you to do so. They made it super watchable, so it wasn't just high-tech play that doesn't make any sense and it's badly communicated. It wasn't any of that. It was made so easily watchable. It was so well shoutcasted. The production levels were so sky-high that it was like watching the World Cup just every month for months on end. I can't wait to see what they do next year, the kind of people they get on board, the production levels, what it looks like, because I've never been so excited to sit down and watch an esport before. And I'm just so glad that it's Overwatch that's done it. I'd like to see them do a few things in the future, a bit more behind the scenes, a bit more crowd stories, a little bit more advertising production, so that, Twitch people aren't just sat around watching a countdown go down, and then also something a little bit more dynamic with the skins and tokens. But those are tiny little niggles in a field of an amazing production. Overwatch League, you did us proud, you did a good job, and I'm so glad that I'm finishing off congratulating the Spitfires. It's been a great week. Thanks very much. Thanks for putting up with this episode. Hopefully it's not one of our worst sort of quick episodes, but I know that's a bit of a niche one, so if you did listen to this, we put out a review of Overwatch's latest hero recently. Go and have a look at that. You can find it in the video at the bottom of the Facebook page. We will see you next week at the regular time of 6:30 on a Monday, and much, much earlier that day on iTunes. If you like the show, please like it so we get out in front of a few more people, or subscribe to it so you don't miss a thing. All that jazz. Have a lovely week. Ace is high, and the game is up.